Like, Joseph wanted to be really all highbrow about everything, and I just wanted to talk about how the French might be about to crash the global economy. So I think it's just quite interesting that there's been a lot of obviously the French government, which is not an unusual thing, is potentially about to collapse again. But the really interesting thing here is how, we're used to in France, like kind of political instability. That's, they're on the Fifth Republic, aren't they, and all the rest of it. Alongside that at the moment is, and this is part of the reason the government might be about to collapse. And this is where I think it's interesting for where we could end up in the UK as well, right? Is that you now have in France, a moderate centrist prime minister trying to be with the public and level with them and saying we can't continue to fund the level of state spending that we have been. The German chancellor said something very similar. Recently, the UK government, in fairness to the Labour government, tried to deal with some of this when it came to things like benefit reform, but then was forced by its left to retreat from that, despite the fact it's got no money to do so. So in France at the moment, you've got state spending at 58% of a GDP. Tax burden on workers is 47%, I think, and the debt-to-GDP ratio is over 113% now. There's just this complete, and the deficit, I think, is forecast to go up again in the next year or two. So France has just run this trajectory of like out-of-control spending. It's the world's fifth or sixth biggest economy, the second biggest economy in the European Union. So very, very significant that the potential impact of there could be the talk of a run on banks and stuff in France and all the rest of it. This is really quite serious for the world economy. We all know what happened in 2008 when we saw runs on banks. But what the more interesting element of it to me is the fact that the new government is being attacked from the left and the right for its decision to try to deal with this spending issue. So you have, I think, the right and the left are both in agreement that the French retirement age should come down or certainly not go up. They're both opposed to cutting spending. So I think this is just a really interesting thing of like both of those things are unsustainable, right? There just isn't the money there in Western economies. So how does France ever get out of this? And how does, if this is the way that UK politics goes as well, because we saw reform in the UK flirting with getting rid of some of the benefit changes we had made to try to cut spending. And then you've got this new hard left party in the UK, which will be on a similar thing. So, at what point do voters in Western economies actually get, look at this and be like, we have to be realistic. We can't just keep buying into, which is a message coming from left and right now, that it's okay, we can keep spending all this money because those people should pay. That's just, look, I mean, we've seen what's happened in the UK. We've exported now loads of millionaires and billionaires, right, since Labour came to power and the non-dom stuff. And so I just think it's really interesting for watch this space on what's happening with France.
Well, the other interesting aspect on this for me is I find this an interesting use case because I think France is one of the few modern economies that has actually a growth population. So it has a demographics that should allow it to perform well financially, but it's over its skis on all of this. And the fact that you've got both, to your point, the left and the right constantly coming out and making promises that are going to be very difficult to fund is a challenge. And because we just see this constant back and forth, the seesaw between left and right, and you throw in a bit of a populist angle on everything. And it seems every government just defaults to passing on the true cost of these things to the next generation. But I don't know that it's easy to win politically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Holly thinks on this, but look at the UK, right? We committed to the triple lock on pensions, which was a very nice thing to do because pensioners tended to vote for us and it was a very generous thing to do. But at the end of the day, throughout this last 15 years or whatever, the one income group that was actually had seen the least impact on its income was pensioners, but we just politically could not get away from the triple lock, even though you could argue it was unfair on younger voters or younger taxpayers. Same thing with Labour when it tried to make some changes to winter fuel allowance. I don't know. We couldn't win on these arguments, right? Because people now are just like somebody else should pay. So
yeah, I agree. And I think what's really interesting about the French story, and I'm not a French speaker and I keep reading the translations, and it's so interesting, the frankness. Are you basically just saying we are living beyond our means? We need to scrap a couple of our bank holidays. We need for some people to pay higher taxes. We need to freeze pensions. We need to have fewer jobs in the public sector. Just that frankness of language is really, really interesting. And I wonder if that's something that we'll start to see here over in the
Yeah.
UK.
I mean, it's not really an election winning platform, is it? We're going to freeze
That's
your
what worries me.
pension, cut your benefits, like take more money from you, and also like make you work more days and probably for longer. It's like not really something that,
It's all short-term pain for the potential promise of something way further down the road. So the only people who stand to gain are the types of people who actually don't show up to vote.
Yeah.
In droves. So it just feels like we're in a vicious cycle all the time on this stuff.
And
So I think we can
expecting,
guess where the votes will go on. I think it's the day after my sister's birthday on the 8th of September when they have the confidence vote or the no confidence vote, however you want to couch it. But I think we can guess which way that's going to go.
but you can't come to voters like Holly and I in our late 20s, early 30s and say that we need to pay more so that people like you in your 50s
Yeah.
can retire at 60 or 65, right? That's not really something that's going to make younger people like me and Holly vote. So anyway, there we are. I mean, one thing you can guarantee, because it's the French, is that they will end up on the streets and they will end up digging up their own streets. My old French teacher used to say to me, France is the only country on the planet where we trash our own streets and dig up our own streets when we're protesting, as opposed to somebody else's. But anyway, we'll see where this goes. But it's just this general trend in like politics across the West, right?
Yeah.
Of just there's a disconnect between the reality and where the public are.